of the earth and rendered it uninhabitable, like burnt apple pie. Whatever people were left were forced to find refuge underground in large caves with water reservations, like Jin and his older brother Topper. But recently the water reservation has been depleting rapidly, and soon there will be no water left for the cave's inhabitants. The community decided that one of the members would have to leave the cave in order to find a new source of water that could carry on in sustaining everyone. The only problem was, no one had ever left the cave before. It was decided that young Jin would ultimately have to leave the cave alone, as he was the only one aptly suited to climb the rope to the opening and light enough to not break it. There was only enough supplies to outfit one savior. A bottle of water, a map so he can find his way back, an umbrella to protect himself from the sun, and a compass. The community had wished to give him more, but none of them knew what to expect, so they wished him luck and watched him hesitantly climb the rope as they chanted his name. Jin, Jin, Jin. When he reached the top, Jin was nearly blinded by the overbearing sun hanging above his head. He had become accustomed to the lantern lighting underground and quickly pulled out his umbrella. He took out his compass and oriented himself until he was pointing north, and reluctantly he started to walk. The ground beneath him was made of dark ash that his foot sank further in each time. He would stop to rest. On few unrecognizable trees that still populated the wasteland. As he was walking, he tripped over something hard his foot hit. He got on his knees to inspect a hard object stuck in dark ash and began to brush away with it his hands. Its stark white surface glimmered as it came into contact with the sun. At first, it felt round, and then quickly struck Jin's hand as he uncovered the buried object. Still on his knees, Jin left the object in the air to examine it, a human skull. At first, his childlike curiosity, or ignorance, kept the skull in his hands for a few moments. Then he realized what it was and threw it back into the ground. He staggeredly got up and ran away from the skull as fast as he could, with no idea what direction he was heading for. His arms flailing above his head, Jin ran towards a cluster of hills. He ran up one hill and stopped at the top before leaning against a tree to rest. He reached around his bag to grab his water bottle, but he could not find it. He checked his bag, and when he realized he must have lost it while running, he backed up against the tree and slowly sloped to the ground. He thought of Topper and the rest of the community, who would surely perish without any water, and began to cry with his face in his hands. Eventually, Jin decided he needed to keep moving along this barren surface. So he stood up against the tree and looked down the hill. Not too steep, he thought. Jin jumped in the air, much like a child would, and swung his umbrella underneath himself, using it like a sled as he laughed his way to the bottom of the hill. When he finally landed, he heard a splash. He looked around and soon realized that he had landed in a huge puddle. Jin screamed with excitement. He began to splash in the water. Eventually, Jin stood up and looked at his own reflection in the water. He had noticed he had a cut on his forehead from the slide down. He smiled. Not knowing where he was, Jin ran back up the hill and looked across the landscape for the glimmering white skull that stuck out in contrast with the black ash. He knew once he found that, then finding his way back home would be easy. He put his hand over his head to block the shade and grazed his eyes until he found the skull half lodged in the ground. He ran towards it, took out his compass, and oriented himself so he would walk south. Eventually, he reached the opening towards his community and excitedly climbed down the rope, anxiously waiting to tell Topper the good news.